Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Hurry Up Live. I'm your host, Adam. Let's get into it. So, to just catch you up, there's been a lot of moves happening prior to the start of free agency. A lot of trades, a lot of, you know, uh, different quarterback moves. And it all started with Aaron Rodgers getting paid an exorbitant amount of money to play quarterback for 4 years for the Green Bay Packers. So, for me, we'll start with him. Once that domino fell, it became apparent that the rest of the teams will do it. I've never seen a guy kind of, you know, how should I put this? I've never seen a guy command so much. The rest of the teams will do it. I've never seen, but it's good to see that he got his money. I mean, he was playing that cat and mouse game that he always plays, like Brett Favre played. Like, come on, we all know what he was doing, and now he gets paid $200 million. And now they're going to keep Devontae Adams as well as a free agent. Let's hope this brings him a title. Let's hope this brings him a title, because right now it ain't bringing him no title. Right, the guy has choked in the big playoff games for years, but he'll be in Green Bay. We'll see what they do. You know, they got to do some cap cutting, some changes, and there's been a lot of trades around the league. Hey Lou, what's going on? How are you? There's been a lot of trades around the league, so we're going to get into and dissect all of them. But let's just, Aaron Rodgers, let's start with that. Once that domino fell and everyone knew that he wasn't going to move or he wasn't going to do it in Denver or any of these other places, that's when other teams can make their moves. Now, after he was, signed, then Russell Wilson gets traded, which was incredible because one, who thought he was going to Denver? Nobody. We thought he was going to the Commanders, but turns out that he's going to the Denver Broncos, which is kind of cool, if you look at it, because he had other offers, which is interesting. He had other offers to go other places, like the Commanders, like a few other teams in the NFC, but for whatever reason, he decided he didn't want to go there. Now, granted, I, probably wouldn't want to go to the Commanders either, to be completely honest with you. But, it's one of those things where do you really want to, do you really want to go to a team that's 50-50? So that led to other moves. So now, Sean. Russell Wilson's now in Denver, and so now that he's in Denver, I think they're a decent team. They're a decent ball club with him. Now they're not even the best team in their division. Think about that. Russell Wilson comes in. Usually, it's an upgrade, right? Usually, you're going to the top of the mountain. You ain't going to the top of the mountain on this one, because you have Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, and not to mention Derek Carr in your division. And, you can rank them however you want, Mahomes, Herbert, Wilson, and Carr, but that's still a formidable bunch of people, a formidable group of people, a formidable quarterback system. And I'm going to put money on it that there are going to be three teams from the AFC West making the playoffs next year. And it will be, the last spot will be between Denver and the Raiders, probably for some type of play-in game. I wouldn't be surprised. You know how they did it with LA this year? Because LA, the Chargers have gotten better as well. Let's not forget about that. Let's not forget about all that. They got better as well. They hired Mike. They had Mike Williams as their receiver. So they're gearing up, right? They're trying to make some moves as well. I hear that they just traded for Khalil Mack. We'll get into that trade in a minute. But Russell Wilson goes to Denver. And, that team was a quarterback away. They won about 7 or 8 games with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. So now you're going to add in Russell Wilson. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good, trade-off. If you were telling me, hey, we're going to take out Teddy Bridgewater and put in Russell Wilson, I'm all for it. I am 100% all for it, with all that. You feel me? So, Russell Wilson's dominoes affected the NFC West greatly. But then again, now You got other quarterback movements, i.e., a guy named Carson Wentz. Now, Carson Wentz is interesting because I did not think that they would necessarily go with Carson Wentz. I thought maybe they would try for Deshaun Watson or go for Malik Willis or a quarterback of that ilk. But apparently they wanted to. I'm surprised they didn't get the Cam Newton sweepstakes, the cheaper option. You don't have to give up less picks. So Carson Wentz goes to the Commanders. Whether I don't know if it's an upgrade. We'll see. We'll see if he plays. We'll see if he plays. We'll see how well he plays because the Commanders they have a good defense. A good defense. And for that defense to come in here, and do stuff. Now you have a quarterback. I mean, they released Landon Collins. I don't know how important he was. Let's be honest. I don't understand how important he was. However, I do think, the Commanders will be fighting for a playoff spot in a wild card team. The NFC is wide open this year with Tom Brady going, Drew Brees not being here and the Saints, falling off, and the Cardinals. Who knows where they're going to be? And you don't know how good the LA Rams are going to be, right? The LA Rams don't ever. This is the first time that we can really tell that the LA Rams are the team to beat. Normally you get those super teams and they don't work out, but they got Matthew Stafford. He ended up doing what Jared Goff couldn't, and they put him over the top. Now, this is what's going to happen a lot. You're going to see these quarterbacks changing teams and destinations and making them good. This has affected the entire landscape of the NFL. And if you're a Giant fan, you've got to be kind of happy and, also a little perturbed because it's like, well, if Carson Wentz can net you a couple picks, what would Daniel Jones get you? Because the remaining guys on free agency, the top ones are like Jameis Winston, Mitch Trubisky, Teddy Bridgewater, and I think Marcus Mariota, right? Are those guys, and then you can put in Fitzpatrick in that mix. Well, are those guys going to net you anything? To me, it's like if the Giants are really going after Mitchell Trubisky, then why not trade Daniel Jones? Because you'll have Mitchell Trubisky. He can reestablish himself as a starter. You already know that he's not going to be here next year. But if he has a good year and the Giants suck, the Giants are going to move on from their quarterback anyways. I know Daniel Jones is the guy here. I'm just saying, future-wise, you could think like that. Let's get Mitchell Trubisky here. Let's ship off Daniel Jones. Let's get draft picks for him, right? He can go have a fresh start somewhere else, Pittsburgh or any other team that needs a quarterback because, Deshaun Watson's case is coming up. There's going to be a lot of teams in that sweepstakes. Then there are 4 or 5 draftable quarterbacks in this year's draft. So you got to think that there's going to be teams that are going to go with some of these lesser named quarterbacks. That's another reason why the Giants are in the market for a backup quarterback, but this is not the year for that. They're not going to get a lot of guys in there. There are going to be a lot of retreads, maybe a Cam Newton, a Teddy Bridgewater, something like that, where they're going to have to bring in because there's going to be a lot of openings for jobs that guys are going to take. And there's a decent quarterback class coming out next year. So there's a ton of movement, a ton of storylines that go along with what's happening in the NFL now. And you're going to see quarterbacks picked in this draft, whether you like them or not, that are going to have to eventually be a starter on a team. There's Carroll, there's Pickett, there's Malik Willis, and there's Desmond Ridder. Those 4 guys I can definitely see going in the first 2 rounds and eventually being a starter for one of these teams. Let's be honest, the Lions need a quarterback. They're not 100% on Jared Goff. The Texans at some point need a quarterback, whether it's this year or next year. So that's how I'm looking at it now. If 9 teams need quarterbacks now, there are 5 guys on the free agency market that are top guys, and then there are 4 or 5 guys in the NFL draft. You could probably have the bases covered, but again, we don't know how that's going to work out. We don't know how that's going to play out, and you can't guarantee yourself a top guy. That's why the Giants have to make a move at 5 or 7 to get more draft picks, because there's no guarantee that they're going to get a starter next year. Mac, Miz, how are you guys doing in the chat? G Nation, I see you guys. What is up? It is the Hurry Up Live on a Friday morning. giving it to you guys, all the NFL news, catching you up on what's going on, giving you my thoughts on the trades, the happenings around the NFL, and of course, your Giants information. But let's keep going with what this means for the NFL. Now, obviously, you have a ton of trades coming out there, ton of trades, right? So these trades aren't official until next Wednesday, right? That's when the league year happens. Tampering doesn't count because what the tampering window was is that years ago, teams used to set up visits and contracts prior to even going out on visits, right? So what happens? Thank you, Mac, the Giant fan, favorite morning talk show. It's where you need to be. You need to be here. You need to be here with me on a Friday morning. Why? Who needs Sirius XM when you got Adam XM? Okay, bringing it to you live and in person right now, right? So my point is that these teams, and Carolina needs a quarterback. So what is going to happen in the draft? You need to get assets because it's going to be hard next year if the Giants happen to win 6, 7, possibly 8 games, depending on the schedule. Now, I don't want to hear about that schedule crap. Everyone's like, oh, it's going to be weak. It's going to be easy to win games. That never is the case in the NFL. A team you think you should win, you probably lose to, and a team you think you shouldn't be, you probably end up winning to. So that's why I think the damn schedule talk is always friggin' boring. Don't give that to me. Don't tell me that we're going to beat these teams. Now, you can be optimistic, but don't go down the list and say this will win, this will win, this will win, because it usually doesn't end up that way. But you can be optimistic. Be optimistic. But if the Giants do happen to have a okay season and they happen to fall outside that top 10, they're going to have a lot of picks then they're going to need to move up. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, but look at it this year. The Giants are in the position that the Jets are in. The Jets are a year ahead of where the Giants are, right? The Jets are they've got their quarterback. They became competitive last year. They fell in line to, building their offense and being competitive. Now they have money to spend, right? Year 2. Look at the Giants. They have hardly any money. They're going to try to do bargain basement free agent signings. And guess what? In 2023, they're going to have more money to spend. I think that's where you can try to make a quarterback move or bring in some big players to push your team closer to where it needs to go. Now the question becomes, do you draft a quarterback or do you take a veteran from another team, right? There's a ton of guys, like I said, that are out there that change teams, that want to leave. Like the Carson Wentz just went to the Commanders. Jimmy Garoppolo is rumored to be going there. Now, the Deshaun Watson court case is going on today at some point. Maybe if they rule on his case today, you'll have a verdict of whether or not he's going in. Then the NFL will make their decision. If they find out there's no wrongdoings or he was set up or it was an egregious human being, maybe he's banned. So that's another domino that falls. If he's reinstated into the NFL, there will be teams like the Panthers going after him. I think Pittsburgh's the perfect pitch for him. I just believe they're a ready-made team. They went to playoffs last year. That team is built to win right now, right? So, I know Miz is like, F the Jets. This is not about Fing the Jets, okay? This is about a comparison on building a team from the ground up and doing it the correct way, and the Jets are on the right track. Max says, how do you feel about the rumors of the Giants aggressively going after Trubisky? Well, right now they're just rumors, but I do believe that they want to bring in competition for Daniel Jones. Now, if you bring in competition for Daniel Jones, you bring in a guy who, let's be honest, there's no guaranteed spot wherever he goes that he's going to be the starter. If he comes to New York, that's a leg up for Mitchell Trubisky. Why do you say? Because he already knows the offense. So for him, he won't have to learn a new offense. He won't have to be like in Pittsburgh where you're going to have to learn a whole new scenario of players and establish yourself. He can already walk in with familiarity with Brian Daboll and know Brian Daboll is going to make the offense tailored to his needs. Now, does he have a better shot at starting at probably Pittsburgh or Carolina or even Indianapolis? Sure. He does, but that doesn't mean he's going to breed success because now he has to learn a new offense. If he comes to the Giants, he already has a leg up on Daniel Jones, right? And may the best man win. And if nothing happens, if nothing else, he'll be back on the market again the next year. Now I think it makes sense for him to come here because you can establish a base to which you can grow, right? And you'll be in a competition, right? You're in a competition is not the easiest way, but I think it makes you look good because you'll know the offense. You won't have to transfer it. You can relay it in the huddle. You'll know where the guys are going to be depending on if they're running the spots. Now the timing is going to be everything, obviously, but that'll be easily worked on. With Daniel Jones, I'm saying he can get the offense, but having Mr. Trubisky and the fact that they're aggressively going after him, or rumors that they're aggressively going after him, tells me exactly what I need to know. They're going to bring in somebody here, whether it's a Trubisky or a Bridgewater or a Mariota or something like that, that's going to try to push Daniel Jones a little bit to kind of see where, one, if he can handle someone breathing down his neck. Two, what will happen when adversity strikes come, week 1, 2, or 3, and there's a good defense that we're playing or a solid defense and they have our number, what's going to happen? Trust me, you bring in a guy like Mitchell Trubisky, and you thought the calls from Mike Glennon were going crazy. Guess what? The calls from Mitchell Trubisky will be off the chain if he struggles. So it's a catch-22 for Daniel Jones. Do I think the Giants are actively pursuing a backup quarterback? Yes. Do I think Mitchell Trubisky is first on their list? Yes. Do I think he'll come here? Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, he's going to get a great deal. Who's going to pay him? He got $4 million last year. And all of a sudden you're going to say that he's going to get like $10 million? Give me a break. Give me a break. If you're that asinine to believe that that's going to happen, then you're drinking the Kool-Aid. And that Kool-Aid is not cool. Let's be honest. That's a bitter Kool-Aid taste and stuff. Because you got Mariota, Winston, you got Teddy Bridgewater out there, guys who have played and had starting experience and actually showed up that they can play. And you're going to take a guy who threw like 8 passes last year because of what he did in Chicago. Listen, if someone backs the Brinks truck up to get him, fine. And some of this is rumors, right? They're maybe the agent's floating these rumors out to get his price tag up. Well, if you want him, you're going to have to compete with the Giants because the Giants are going to go after him. I think the Giants are really clearing cap space for a couple of guards and tackles and maybe a quarterback to bring in. Now, I think if they don't get a quarterback, they might draft one. If Carroll slips to them in the second round, Corral, that's the guy you go with. Right? You pick him in the second round. You can groom him. See, this is the thing. The NFL has lost the art of development. Okay, and the reason this is such a tough subject is that you guys want to win now. But if you look at like a team like the Bengals, they had no backup quarterback. They threw him in there, trial by fire. Well, guess what? When they threw that kid in there, Joe Burrow, he blew out his knee because they had no offensive line to protect him, and guys were going low and trying to hit him. Right? So now you can bring in a guy like Corral, who I think is going to be a solid NFL quarterback, who honestly, if you look at evaluations now, this I have to evaluate quarterbacks. You can't evaluate Daniel Jones now. You can evaluate Daniel Jones now amongst his peers. Okay? Amongst his peers. Meaning you can evaluate him against Mitchell Trubisky, you can evaluate him against, whatever other starting quarterback in the league, right, that you want to put him up against. Carson Wentz, Trevor Lawrence. You can't evaluate him now against Malik Willis, against Kenny Pickett, because he's already had a resume. You can't dictate that. You can't tell me a guy is going to be good or bad just based on how they are. What you got to do is you got to look at, when you look at evaluations, you go to the evaluation of when the guy was coming into the league, and then you compare and contrast the pros and cons, or the strengths and weaknesses of said player. Because what will happen then is that if you do that, you will be able to then get an idea of where the entire NFL might be ranking him. For example, Ritter, Pickett, and Corral all had a better ranking on NFL.com and DraftProfile.com than Daniel Jones going into this draft process. They also had the same kind of how should I put this? The evaluation was all over the place for all these quarterbacks. No one knows their first round pick. No one knows their second round pick. No one knows any of that. And so for me, I can't look at these quarterbacks at what they are now. I got to look at who they can compare against, right? Coming out. B, how do I feel they're going to fit into the offense going forward, and what traits do I think I can work on? For example, and this is only an example, if Brian Dable were banging the table for Malik Willis at 7, right? Let's say for argument's sake, Carolina gets Deshaun Watson, and now Houston gets the 6th pick. Maybe they pick Malik Willis, but for this argument's sake, let's just say they don't, right? Let's say the Texans get Kyle Hamilton, and in the trade they also get, Cross as a tackle, right? So now at 7, coming up for the Giants, Dable's like, you know what? I want to bring in a quarterback here. I don't want to wait till the 2nd round. Let's bring in Malik Willis here. Well, guess what? Bringing in Malik Willis allows you to grow, allows you to, allows you to do a lot of the stuff that you need to do, right? It allows you to have a guy in your system grooming, learning, becoming the quarterback of the future, because next year is no guarantee that you're going to be able to get up and get one of those quarterbacks, right? So if you go up and get one of those quarterbacks and you already have a guy on the roster, now you don't need to worry or pressure yourself to give up the farm because you got Malik Willis here or you got a Desmond Ridder. Mac again with the questions on fire today. He's asking, he's asking if Linderbaum slips down into the back end of the 1st, would you be opposed to trying to trade up and getting him? No, I am not trading up for Linderbaum, even if he slips to the back end of the round, because there's a couple other guys that they say are better or on a comparable level as Linderbaum. So, no, I'm not going to waste picks for Linderbaum. I don't, as good as he is, I can get a center in the 2nd round. There was a couple guys at the combine that were rising up. There's a couple names being thrown around that you can get in the 2nd and 3rd round. So I'm not going to use up capital for Linderbaum. Now, if you were telling me Ike Ekwonu was slipping to the back end of the 1st round, because they said that he had a degenerative knee or something, that's a different story. That's a totally different ball game. Right? That's a totally different ball game. But for me, Linderbaum, I'm not doing it. I can't do it. Let's see. How should I look at this? The thing is, like, would I trade up for Linderbaum? Maybe. Well, would I trade up for Zion Johnson? Maybe. Chris Bucco says 3 days away. He is right. Basically today, tomorrow, and Monday at midnight is basically the tampering period. Actually, it's like 4 p.m. the next day, but they're going to be tampering. Contracts will be, they don't even go out to visit anymore. Think about that. They don't even go to visit anymore. You just can tamper with somebody. It used to be you used to court somebody. If that you don't know what that means, it's like wooing someone, right? Yo, look at our facilities. We have a new state-of-the-art stadium. We put down new field turfs. We did this, we did that. Right? 12 p.m. tampering is starting. I said 12 a.m., which we all know it's really starting 12 a.m. midnight, let's be honest. But 12 p.m. it'll become official with the, contracts and everything. But 12 p.m. it starts on Monday morning, the tampering period. You're going to see, like I said, tampering is you can set up visits, set up contracts, get things going, but they can't be signed. So you can bring a guy on Monday. You can bring in, let's say, who's a free agent? Let's say Chandler Jones, or excuse me, let's use somebody else, Melvin Ingram, right? Just for argument's sake. Let's say the Giants were into Melvin Ingram. They could bring him in at 12 o'clock. They could have a parameter deal done, right? They could say, we're giving you 1 year, $8 million, right? Once 4 p.m. hits on the 16th of March, then the contract becomes final. It can become legal, right? Before then, it cannot be. It can be agreed upon. It can be a handshake, but it can't necessarily change the way it's. You can't do anything prior to that. The reason they bring up tampering is because people were doing this anyways. They were setting up their visits and getting people ready to go on a Monday. So they said, well, instead of, illegally finding these people, let's just make a tampering window, which will allow it to do. So a lot of your free agency will happen from Monday to about Friday. You'll see all the things being finalized. Those trades will go through. Everything that you see will go through. Everything will happen on that day. But you can tamper. That's why you see in trades right now. That's why you don't see a lot of guys sign. Now, that's different. Free agency means those guys can't be signed till 4 p.m. on the 16th. However, you can sign free agents that are cut from teams, meaning if you cut a guy today, he can be signed on Saturday, right? Because he has no ties now. Now you basically fired him. He's a free agent. He's technically a free agent, but he's not under contract as a free agent. So if you're under contract to the next league year. So, like Nate Solder, if somebody wanted him, is not available till now. Evan Ingram is not available till the 13th. Now, had they cut Evan Ingram earlier on, it allows them to. He would have been able to sign with anybody. What this also allows you to do, if you wanted to, is sign your own players back. That's what March does. Instead of having, they used to have the new league year early on. Of course, they push it back. That's a whole marketing thing. They want you to have football 24/7, 365, and the further they push it back, the closer it gets, the more relevant they are in the news cycle. However, this is what happened, right? You then get these guys who can come in and go in, right, into this free agency pool at 4 p.m. So you can sign anybody. That's why the Giants could sign the tackle Gunnell, because he was cut from another team, which released him from his contract. But most likely, guys who are free agents are not going to be released. They're just going to their contract's going to expire once the league year starts. Now, let's get into a little bit of what's happening in the Giant world. And this will be bigger. We've touched on some of the trades. Guys are going everywhere. This is a great time of year, it really is, because this is kind of the pathway to the draft. Now, the Bills cut a couple players. There's a couple players that they like. The Giants have renegotiated Sterling Shepard. That's been official. He's coming back. I don't know how I feel about that, but we'll see what happens. You can't have too many bodies at receiver. But what I'm afraid is he doesn't use the year. But the good thing is, if you give him a cheaper deal, $4 or $5 million or less, right? The cost of cutting him next season won't be as egregious. What happens is they're going to get money back. He's going to come back. The best case scenario for him is if he comes back healthy, he plays a season, he can reestablish his value. Worst case scenario, he gets injured. He's with the Giants. He's in their facility. He can be in the rehab center, all that good jazz, right? So, and if you look at Buffalo, they had Stephon Diggs. They had, Isaiah McKenzie, and they had Cole Beasley. Well, you can look at this like this is Shepard, Kadarius Toney, and Kenny Galladay, right? Your three main weapons right now. Now, I think they're going to get one in the draft. The draft is rich of receivers. I think they can get that. They're also this is a great time to have money for the Giants or a little money, because there's a lot of offensive linemen out there. James Daniels, the guy who just got cut from Buffalo, Feliciano or whatever his name is. I think he's going to want a little bit more money. He got cut for many reasons, and someone was like, well, we might be his only. Is only asking. Like, nah, he might find. This is what we call leverage. This is a negotiation season. This means that, hey, you might be, that guy, right? You might be able to, how should I put this? You might be able to get a guy cheap, but that doesn't mean there won't be other suitors for him. What if somebody says, hey, we're going to pay you more money? Are you then going to be like, well, he's going to take a hometown discount? No. Now, if there are no suitors for him, or the market is everyone's giving them the same amount of money, hey, we're going to give you $3 million, then maybe he does come to the Giants. Again, look at familiarity. The Giants have done it with every coaching staff they have hired since McAdoo. And the only difference with McAdoo was he had no reference point that he came from. So you couldn't really, he was just already on the Giants. So you got him free agents, but you didn't, you got him guys like Olivier Vernon, Janoris Jenkins, like guys all over the place that you were just at the top of the market and had enough money to get. So that's what you did. You built a defense. And then your draft picks came through, such as, Odell Beckham, Landon Collins, guys like that came through for you. So it worked out. The next year, when they fired him in 2017 and they went in 2018 and they got Pat Shermer, well, they brought in guys for James Betcher's defense. They brought in Kareem Martin. They brought in, Antoine Bethea. They brought in, Marcus Golden, right? And then when they also on offense, they brought in James Stewart as a backup for Carolina. They also brought in David Mayo from Carolina to help out on the defense. So they brought familiar guys that they knew were coming cheap. But look for the Giants to do that. Now, will guys who have established themselves want to come here? For example, the lineman from the Bills. His name is Joe. I'm going to call him Joe F because I'm his name is escaping me right now, but you know, he was cut, and it was due to money reasons, which is funny, but not funny, right? Um, the problem that you have here is that once everyone's cut, the Giants are in the mood to get everybody. Well, let's get this person, let's get that person, let's get this person, and it really is not. It's not always as easy as it seems. Now, they might bring in the Giants are going to need to bring in a lot of players. They're going to be in a lot of players, like a guy like Trey Flowers. If the Giants can't sign Lorenzo Carter for a cheap deal, maybe you bring in a Trey Flowers. Now, people, let's get into some of the free agents that the Giants are rumored to be a part of or around, right? Evan Ingram, let's start with him. Bye, Felicia. That's all I have to say about Evan Ingram. Bye, Felicia. Okay? I don't want him on this team anymore. He doesn't need to be on this team anymore. And if people are like, well, Brian Daboll likes him, let him go somewhere else. And don't be worried about, well, he's going to do better on someone else's team. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a rat's tail about him being good and being good somewhere else. If you care about that, then you're not focused on football. You can't. It's like, think of it like this: you're at a job, or a friend of yours is at a job. They get fired, right? They were having trouble at that job. They go out in another job and do well. Are you going to be like, well, we could have him here now? Like, okay, well, guess what? It didn't work out here. So let the man go and get a chance to prosper, a chance to prove to us and the league that he is the tight end or player that we think he is. Me, I don't see it, because come game day, that guy looks great in practice, but come game day, he doesn't deliver all the time. The saying, looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. That's Evan Ingram to a T. Evan Ingram is a guy for me that just doesn't move the needle. And the Giants have tight end issues. Let's be honest. They're going to sign somebody, whether it's Evan Ingram again. I don't think Evan Ingram precludes you from signing or drafting a guy, but I'm not bringing Evan Ingram back for more than like $3 million, $4 million. Not that's it. Sorry. If he can get 6 or 7 somewhere else, bye, Felicia. Same thing with Jabril Peppers. I think Peppers has a better chance of being back than Evan Ingram. And the reason why I believe that is because Peppers offers more versatility than him and the defense, and we need safeties. Personally, I would let go of Logan Ryan. I thought he was cooked last year, to me, and reestablish the back end of that team, right? So bring in a Jabril Peppers, sign J.R. Reed back, and then maybe bring in a safety. Again, when you are rebuilding things, it's like rebuilding a house, right? Think about it like this. There's a few ways to renovate or rebuild. You can do a full renovation, which is basically taking the framework of the house and just changing it up a bit, or you can do a full rebuild where you tear it down and rebuild it brick by brick the way you want to. The Giants have done a lot of renovating, with a lot of unfinished products, that the unfinished portions of their house not being done, right? So they'll work on fixing the basement, then something falls through. They'll work on fixing this, and then it falls through. This year is a complete and utter teardown. Now, I like the fact the Giants went out and signed Gano, the lineman, right? I think it was a good signing and a good start if you're a Giant fan to say, hey, we know they're on the right track right now. We know that they're going for, a lineman. That makes me happy, because it's like, well, you're already off to a good start. And if you check out the kid's film, he can play. He's not a schlub by any means, but he's not great. And he's a developmental guy. This is a guy you bring in, and you look at your O-line coach, Bobby Johnson, and you say, hey, can you get this done? And he's going to say yes. And if you watch his film, he's not bad. The problem he has is he lets up the inside a little bit. But those are things you can be worked on. It's not like he doesn't have the strength to play. It's sometimes your technique gets off, and that could be overthinking. That could be a myriad of things, right? Not trusting the technique, not trusting your hand placement. That's how you do it. Plus, when you have limited action like he did in Atlanta, and by the way, Atlanta was put a second round tenure on him, which means they wanted to keep him. This year, with injuries and COVID, he was expendable, right? And the Giants scooped him up. It's already off to a good start there, right? And so if you're already off to a good start there, what's happening? Right? Well, what's happening? Right? They have 6 guys under contract. I think they'll bring in more. I mean, there's rumors about James Bradbury being traded for a guard. There's a guard from the Buffalo Bills that's a free agent. The guy that just got cut from the Buffalo Bills is a free agent. Will they want to cut again? There's I forget the guy. There's a guard from the Tennessee Titans. Sorry, I forget his name. I'm all these names I'm throwing out there, and I can't even give them to you. But, why there's going to be plenty of guys to go after this year, and I'm happy that the Giants, are in this position because there's going to be a solid guys that they bring in. Some are going to be stopgaps. Some are going to be actual, couple-year deals, right? Because you can't just fix everything or do everything in one sitting. It's just not like that. Again, I go to the house analogy. You can only put so much money into certain things before you run out of money, right? And so if you're running out of money, you can't have that same type of attitude, right? Because people are like, oh, just do this, just do that. This is so easy. This is so great. Like, no, it's not as easy as you think, and it's not one of those things that you can just throw and stick at the wall. There's going to be a lot of competition. I'm going to go on a limb and say there's going to be about there's probably going to be about 15 to 17 linemen in camp by the time we're all said and done with this thing, right? And I think they're going to pare that down to about 9 or 10 guys. If it's 9 guys, there's going to be a guard in there that probably can play center and a couple other players. Because, when roster crunching happens, these are the type of things you're going to be thinking about. How many linemen can I keep? And when I do keep a lineman, what versatility does he have? Can he play inside? Can he play outside? Does he play center? A lot of these guys are going to be looked at that way. Not to mention they're going to be undrafted free agents. Again, this is what I'm talking about. The Giants want to build it. Joe Schoen wants to build in their image. I know that the people don't want necessarily Mitchell Trubisky, but guess what? He might come in here, or there might be another guy in here to push Daniel Jones. There's going to be some guys. Now, don't expect to go anywhere. They're going to be, bargain basement shopping, which isn't, necessarily a bad thing. However, it's one of those things where, you may not like the player that they get, or you may not understand the move that you get, or maybe they'll get a guy that is like, where he might have some upside from another team, but because of, lack of playing time, roster spots, being out for COVID or being slightly injured, because remember, Gano also had a shoulder injury, right? So that might limit him because he was out last year with that. So that limits him to his effectiveness and his ability to do certain things. So if that's how you're looking at it, you need to be of the ilk of we need to get guys in here. Now he could be a depth piece, maybe a spot starter. These are the things the Giants need to develop guys. Remember, they need to develop a team. I think we sit here, I think we sit here and we don't know what we're getting ourselves into, right? We think every guy's going to be a starter. You know what I mean? You see if anything's a starter. And for me, I don't necessarily need every guy to be a starter. Because even I think the experts are saying it. You don't need all pros across the line. You need you need guys who aren't tomato cans, right? You need guys who aren't tomato cans. And if they are tomato cans, you need to make sure that you have backups to get in there. Because last year the Giants had Andrew Thomas and 4 trash bags. Now, Shane Lemieux's on the team, right? So if you get let's say the Giants have Shane Lemieux, They draft a tackle, they have Gano, and then they have maybe Brederson, and they bring in a couple of free agent guys, and they bring in a center. Now your offensive line might be built already. And now when you go into the draft, you're not pressing to get a guy. You're not, oh, let me trade up to get Linderbaum because, he's the highest rated player. Now you can let the draft come to you. And maybe there's a Zion Johnson that falls to you. Maybe there's a guy that you like. Remember, here's what people need to remember. Just because the media rates a guy high doesn't mean a team rates that guy high. Just because Daniel Jeremiah says, Kayvon Thibodeau is not, Aiden Hutchinson is the number one defensive end. Maybe somebody has Kayvon Thibodeau as their number one defensive end. Maybe Walker now moves up a defensive end. Then you look at functionality. It's the same thing as if you were in a job interview, right? And they're putting your resume against somebody else's resume, and they go, well, Adam's got this, and this. We like him. But this guy brings this, and this. And we like that as well. But what do we need more of? Do we need more of what Adam brings? Or do we need more of this guy? Does he fit a need better than Adam? So now you draft a guy that many people think, look at the Raiders. They drafted Colin Farrell. Now, do I believe that he was a great pick there? No, they could have drafted other players, but they deemed that guy the highest on their board. That's why they drafted him there. You know what I mean? And so quarterback's a different situation because you're not necessarily drafting the quarterback for a need. You're drafting the quarterback for you're drafting the quarterback as a necessity. And so they have a higher value and a higher price point than most people, right? They have a higher value point than most people. So you can't bring in a quarterback and just not bring in a quarterback. You know what I mean? But other players might be valued differently. For example, look at 2010 draft. The Giants had JPP going, right? There was other defensive ends they could have chosen, like Brandon Graham, but they went with JPP because of his upside. The Giants got the better player. If you look at the stats, JPP's won 2 Super Bowls, been to 3 Super Bowls, or been close to it, and here he is, right? So he has 80 sacks, and Brandon Graham fit what the Eagles needed to do. Now, he had a decent career with the Eagles, and JPP had a decent career with the Giants and a decent overall NFL career, but it just goes to show the value. For example, another one, right? The Giants valued Leonard Floyd high. Well, guess what? The Bears wanted Leonard Floyd and jumped him. So they don't always need to trade up for quarterbacks. They'll trade up for other players if they deem they want that player. And that's why the Giants need to be close to the vest at what they're going to do, because you don't want them to lose out on the player that they want. Now, for me, if I'm the Giants and I sign a ton of veteran linemen and bring in some young guys and some new guys in draft, maybe at 1 and 7, or maybe at 5 and 7, we're not going for a lineman. Maybe at 5 and 7, we go for a cornerback and a defensive and an outside edge rusher. Maybe we do it differently, right? Maybe we go for 5 and 7 as an edge rusher and a defensive tackle like a Jordan Davis or something like that. So it will, you've got to understand how they do it. They reevaluate their board after free agency. They reevaluate their board after pro days. They reevaluate their board after they get information of the combine and the medicals come back. It's going to change a lot, right? And so now you got to think of it like this. The Giants have 9 picks right now. They might get 10 or 11 or less, depending on if they trade up. Now, I would not want to trade up. I'm just thinking trading up right now when you can get good players throughout the draft. If this draft were top heavy, for example, and they, Ike Ekwonu and Neal and everybody were better than anybody in this draft, then I would say trade up and get them if that's what you want, right? Because the next year, that's what's going to happen. The quarterback position is going to be there. You're going to need to trade into the top 10 to get a guy that you deem worthy, right? But in this draft, there are a lot of players that rank in the same across the board in the same categories from basically, 32 to basically almost 80, right? There'll be a lot of starters and good players there. So you don't want to give up draft picks to get a player to sacrifice a decent player down the road because you're going to need better players going forward. So Monday is going to be it. So let's get into some of the cuts the Giants made. The Giants cut Riley Dixon. Finally, it's about time. They do have a punter on the roster that they acquired from the Browns, who had a decent outing, but got cut. These are the type of moves you're going to see. Maybe they bring in a competition for a leg competition, but Riley Dixon gone. Thank God. Sterling Shepard, pay cut. That'll free up some money. James Bradbury's in talks for being traded. Now, the thing is, the Giants, if you're going to trade him, it means you probably want to keep him. Because if you're going to cut him, why would somebody trade for him, right? So there's probably three options for Bradbury. A is cut, B is traded, or C, they restructure his deal and bring him back. And then you don't need a cornerback in the draft. See, a lot of these moves don't always preclude you from drafting a guy because you can always get better at spots. But it gives you a backup option. So again, Gano, right? I'm not saying he's an all-world starter, but you have a guy right now that can fill in if you need to, if you happen to need somebody as a spot starter. Now we'll let free agency play out, see where they go, see what guys they're sniffing around, see what guys they can sign, because the Giants have to be, I know people are like, oh, they don't need to be aggressive. If they want somebody early on, they've got to be aggressive early on. They can let it shake out because other people are going to get cut as people get closer and closer to the cap. Like I said, Trey Flowers got cut. Would I bring him in as an edge rusher? I sure as shit would. Cheap deal. Again, that doesn't preclude you from drafting him because if he's cheap. Remember, the Giants brought in Ryan Anderson last year, Adenabo, all these edge rushers last year on 1-year deals. None of them made it to the final roster, which was kind of interesting. But maybe they bring in Trey Flowers for a cheap deal, and let's say Trey Flowers says, "Frick it, fuck it, I'm going to do well," right? And he ends up being well. Now you draft a guy. Now he reestablishes himself. You've got a guy in the wings that can learn the offense, because the thing is, a team goes as well as their weakest link. And if your weakest link can't even get the playbook or doesn't understand, it's your job as a coach. That's why I never understood about the Kadarius Toney thing. Because Kadarius Toney was like, well, why aren't you giving him easy plays to make? Why aren't you giving Kadarius Toney plays that are able to be made via his skill set? Every other player in the NFL gets there, right? And then some people are saying, well, he doesn't know the playbook. You don't punish a guy. Because he doesn't know the playbook. You give him plays that can work for him, and he's electric, and you get him on the field, whether that's punt return, kickoff return, whatnot. You just get him on the field. And then with that, as his role increases, look at the Giants. They had, what's his face? Corey Coleman, right? He was a kick returner. Did some nice things for them as a kick returner. Then they integrated him in the offense. Now, he blew out his knee, and he was a cheap flyer option. But the point is that they gave him a chance to try to do something. Kadarius Toney put him in the doghouse early and made him earn his spots. This is a first-round pick we're talking about here. This is a guy that you're building your franchise or becoming a part of your franchise. You know what I mean? It really is. You are – thank you, Mac. Thank you for the compliment. You don't – draft a first. That's like drafting Kayvon Thibodeau, saying, well, we're not going to use him because there's no playbook. No, you are a coach. You need to figure out what his strengths are, how you can use them, and where they need to go. Because if that is the case, then you're losing out on a talent or a game-changing talent. Like if Kadarius Toney was a 5th-round pick, fine. I don't really care, right? I'm not going to be as enamored with him, but you got a guy on here who's a first-round pick who needs the development, and is a playmaker and is electric with the ball, and you're going to be like, well, he doesn't know the offense. Give me a break. That's why I thought, last year's coaching staff regressed in their evaluation process, because the first year they had everybody on the field. Cam Brown, Carter Coughlin, you name it, they were on the field. Nico Lalos. Then this year, they had none of those guys playing, none of those guys contributing on there, and even in special teams. And so you're telling me that guy who got drafted as a 6th-round pick at Cam Brown can get more burn than the guy that you spent the 20th overall pick on? Not a good look. So this year, you're going to expect the 4 or 5 players that they get in the first 3 rounds to be contributors. Whether they're starters or not, they need to be heavy contributors. And I don't want to hear about, well, he doesn't know the playbook. Find what he's good at and put him on the field. Okay. Now, a guy like Evan Ingram, the thing about Evan Ingram that's interesting, and we'll get into him, they're saying that he's going to be a slot receiver. He basically played slot receiver for the Giants. Okay, he's a tight end. The reason why you didn't put him on the outside is he didn't have the burner speed. Yeah, he ran a 4.4, but that doesn't mean you have burner speed. Okay, Tyreek Hill has burner speed. You see the gear. Evan Ingram doesn't have that. He has a long strider. He runs kind of funny, and he's a tight end that doesn't have great route running ability. And when you need a tight end, what is a tight end built for? The 5, 10, 15-yard in cuts and dig routes and things that are going to move the chains, right? Evan Ingram was more of a weapon that they try to do reverses on. How many tight ends do you see do reverses? Maybe 2 or 3 in the league? George Kittle or something like that. Travis Kelce. Guys that have speed or weapons, but not Evan Ingram. And the thing is, if you look at Evan Ingram, he has so many drops. He has so many different plays that are bad that it doesn't make for me to bring him back. He doesn't show up in big games, and that's where you need to see him, is in big games, right? In big games. And in the Eagle game, that cost him. There's been times where he tipped the ball up in the air. Against Washington, he tipped the ball twice, and then the linebacker, being that he was a linebacker, didn't catch the ball. So here we are. So let Evan Ingram go. Let him grow someplace else, right? Riley Dixon, he regressed, and they paid a lot of money for him. Again, he was part of the other regime that spent money, made a trade for him, and kept him around. Okay, let him hit the door on the way out, right? They cut a few other players. Rudolph. Nobody cares about Rudolph. I'm not going to miss him either. Shepard taking a pay cut. Martinez taking a pay cut. These are guys that, that are not what you want, not who you need. You know what I'm saying? These are guys that, need to be checked at the door, really. Because the Giants are going to bring in tight ends. There are not that many on the market that are worthy. David Njoku got franchise. Unbelievable. That's probably to set him up for a contract. Because remember, franchise tag is usually a placeholder. You don't want to play on it usually. But if you do, you're getting guaranteed money. You're getting guaranteed $11 million, right? So I wouldn't have paid Njoku $11 million, but maybe this will allow them to build a long-term deal going forward. For the Giants, I would go target a guy like O.J. Howard, maybe even an Eric Ebron. I know people aren't going to like that, but you're going to need tight ends anyways. You're going to need to bring in a guy who will help you out, and the veteran guy will allow the young rookie to develop. Remember, this is a team, right? And how should I bring this down? If you put a guy in there and he fails early on, what do you think is going to happen to him? His confidence wanes. His he doesn't put in the work at the end of the day because what you're telling him is not translating to it on the field. I had a coach, football coach and a career coach, both of them, and they gave me guidance. And let's just use a career coach because that's most recent. I don't play any other sports right now. But the career coach gave me a myriad of ideas to try. And when I was looking for a job, I'm sitting here like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. That's not how guys get jobs. And then one day I was in a rut. I remembered what he said to me, and I said, let me try out his way. And guess what? His way worked. So sometimes you've got to let the coach get in there. You got to take the coaching. You can't say you're the best player. You can be the best player in college, but you may not be the best player on your team right now. And you can't measure heart. You can't measure stuff. Like they say, oh, Daniel Jones is, he studies. Oh, guess what? When is that going to translate to wins? When's that going to translate to wins? I don't care. You can study all you want. If you study and you still get C's on the test, what does it matter? It means something that you're not connecting with. Whether that means you're playing hero ball or maybe just an average student. That just happens. People are average sometimes. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. Just doesn't, I don't know what to say. It doesn't make you a bad person, but you got to let them fail and build them up in order to find out what they can do. Otherwise, you just leave them there to collect dust, and then people are banging down the door to see these guys. Competition breeds, greatness. It does. If you have competition at every level and guys are going to steal your playing time, well, guess what, Kenny Galladay? You better step up. You better not get on the field. Remember, here's the story of Wally Pipp. Being that it's MLB baseball season is back. Oh joy, But for those who love baseball, here's a Wally Pipp story. So everyone knows about the player. I forget what his name was. That was basically saying to his coach, "Oh, I'm sick or I can't play today." And then a guy named Wally Pipp came in and played well, and that guy never saw his job again. Right. So, and that's why they say Wally Pipped, because sometimes you decide, I don't feel good today. I'm not going to put in the best effort, and someone else goes in and shines. Guess what? Now you may have lost your spot. And in the NFL, and especially with social media, you cannot get away with dogging it anymore, because there's somebody watching. Whether it's me, the little fan at home that's recording the game, and I take a video Snapchat and put it out there on and gets millions and goes viral. Guess what? Everyone's going to find out. They will find a way, and then they'll question you on it. Hey, man, the team was doing well, doing poorly. Where were you at? Where was you at? You know what I'm saying? Where was you at? That's what I'm saying. It's like, where was you at on those plays? Why were you dogging it? Your injury? Because there's a thing about Kayvon Thibodeau who's dogging it. Well, he might have been injured. I'm not saying favor your injury, but if tackling somebody, if your shoulder injury hurts when you tackle people, guess what? I'm not going to tackle somebody or tackle them that's hard, or my foot hurts. Things happen. People are young. And I know people are like, well, Kayvon Thibodeau's entitled. Well, that's the coach needs to get to him and figure out how you can get this guy. Because someone said, I think it was Carl Banks, they were talking about Odell Beckham Jr. Like, well, Odell Beckham Jr. is a selfish player. He goes, you're going to have those guys on your team. He's like, you need to let them be who they are. Now, it's when that guy's message doesn't connect with your message is when you fall, right? When people are like, oh, well, I'm Odell Beckham Jr. and I don't care about winning. That's when you have a problem. If it's Odell Beckham Jr., he's being Odell, but he wants to win, that's a different story. You could use that. Lou Gehrig got Wally Pipped. Sorry, Mac, I didn't know if it was Lou Gehrig because, he had that injury, he had that disease, so I didn't think it was him. But Lou Gehrig, he had a disease, and he got Wally Pipped because he didn't want to play. But let's see, his name is Walter Clement Pipp. Was an American first baseman for the Reds and the Detroit Tigers. And let's see where his life is. In read the purchase, let's just read this. Removal from the starting lineup. Yes, it was. The Yankees began the 1925 season struggling, and Huggins began to replace players in the lineup in response. Huggins benched starting shortstop Everett Scott on May 6th, replacing with Pee Wee Wagner. At the time, Scott had the longest streak of consecutive games played. The Yankees struggle. Then again, before their game against Washington, Huggins replaced Pipp in the lineup with Gehrig. So basically, it says here that Wally Pipp was replaced by Lou Gehrig, and he never saw the lineup again, right? So they called it Wally Pipp. You know what I'm saying? So, those are the things. And what I mean by that is that people will replace your booty. If you're booty, you'll get your booty replaced if you're not careful. If I'm sick as a dog at work and I'm like, I can't work, well, people have to cover for me. But I know I have my job at the end of the day. Now, if I'm struggling and they're going to put me in there or change me up, well, guess what? If the guy behind me is better, we might be moving on from you. And that's life. That's not even just sports, that's life. We're constantly being evaluated. We're constantly being told we're good enough or not good enough, or can't make this play, can't make that play, all the time. So, and I think a lot of the problem with fans is they're too loyal. They're like, oh, well, we need to keep this guy because God forbid he does something well. Blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Move on from him. And this is why I love the Giants and what they're doing right now, because Joe Shane don't give a damn about nobody on that roster. And to me, I believe you get rid of everybody from that regime at some point. And me, it's like I don't care about Daniel Jones starting. I'd rather go with Tyrod Taylor or Malik Willis or something like that to get the ball rolling and get this guy out of here, because I think I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they think he might be a shot fighter, and I agree. He might be shell shocked. He's been sacked, and let's be honest, the pressure is not going to go away because Daniel Jones hasn't performed well, and now nobody, even in their right mind, can say that he's the guy or not the guy. But to me, I'm leaning towards he's not the guy, because if it's taking 3 years for you to find out who he is, then maybe he ain't who he is. Like, look at Joe Burrow. He came out gangbusters his first year. He got injured. Trevor Lawrence, they believe in him. He came out, he did some things. So they can let him develop, right? And sometimes you've got to overcome the chaos. And can Daniel Jones do that? They're going to give him a shot. But this team is going to put everything in front of him and let the chips fall where they may, and let things go on where they may. And I just feel like right now, we should be excited as Giant fans, because we have no idea what's coming on the 16th. There's going to be a lot more cuts being made. The Giants are going to make them. They're going to be strategic about making them. They're going to ask guys to take pay cuts. You're going to see in the next, Saturday, Sunday, in the next 72, 48 hours, you're going to see a lot more moves made, because that tampering period is essential if you have your eyes on a guy. And obviously they make the free agency frenzy where guys are going, but this is how it's going to be. And because a lot of teams are under the salary cap and the salary cap is tight this year, you're going to have your chance at getting players to help build your team. Next year, a lot of people are going to have a lot more money. They're going to be able to be moved up. Trades are going to happen. So think of it like that. When you're building a team you can't think of the now season. You got to think of the next year's season, right? The season that you may not. You can't just. It's like this, right? Again, I use the house analogy. If you want a hotel room, you get a hotel room now, right? Now you can pick throughout, depending on your budget, you can go to a 5-star, 2-star, 1-star, or sleep in your car, right? Or you can buy a house, which will allow you to have a more longevity in where you live. So you're not going to a hotel every day, So these are some things you need to think about going forward. But these are things that I want to touch on and wanted to give you my thoughts on it and things like that, right? There's a possibility that Chandler Jones is going to be doing some stuff, right? He might be moving on. Khalil Mack went to who did he go to? Jeez, he went to the Chargers. I mean, that team is loading up and going for it. They know that their quarterback is good. They know that their quarterback is taking the next level. That guy in the second year, has shown more flashes than Daniel Jones has shown in 3 seasons, in 2 years. So they know they're going for it. These are the things I'm talking about. You're going to know who the guys are. And just because a guy is not rated high right now doesn't mean anything. Okay, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't. Because it's about the eye of the beholder, right? And what you think that they're going to do with that player when he comes in, right? Somebody might like Kenny Pickett. The Giants, anything's on the table when you sit here. Anything can happen. And that's the fun, exciting part, but also the scary part. Like a guy like Trayvon Walker. Where was he? All of a sudden now he's blowing up draft boards. Great. There's reservations about him that scare me. I don't know if he's going to be a bona fide stud. I can only hope. I can only imagine. But there's no promise. There's more promise in Thibodeau than there is Walker. But again, it's going to be your flavor. Same thing with free agency. It's about budgeting, right? You got to sign. Look at the Giants. The Giants have got to sign their draft picks. Now, depending on where they draft, they're going to need about 15 to 20 million. I say that 15 to 20 million number because if they move out, they're not going to need as much, right? If they move out from 7 or 5, they're not going to need as much. But what if they sign the best? What if they sign Andrew Norwell as a guard, right? They sign the other guard, Ike Bogater, and maybe they sign a center, and they all come in at relatively cheap prices. And now you got 3 guys in there. Now, Shane Lemieux is still a factor in there. Now, you can ask him to move to center. He was taking center snaps. Remember, they were asking him to be a center as well. So maybe he becomes a center now. And so now you have, Bogater, you have Norwell, and you have Lemieux. And then you draft your tackle, whether that's Cross or Penning or whoever, Falalale, whoever it is, right? That drops to you. So now you have your guy and your line. And now you can then fill in the rest of the players, right? The tight end, you're going to need a tight end. Are you going to spend a lot of money on a tight end? I don't know. I don't think so. I think the Giants need more bats in the apple. More at bats. If we're using baseball terms here. More at bats. And more at bats allows you the flexibility to move up and down the rosters. And there's going to be guys you may not have heard of. Listen, this is why they have a pro player personnel department and a scouting department. They use those. Like look at Hayden Hurst. Right? I think he plays for Atlanta. He's a blocking tight end. He came in Baltimore. He did okay. He's 28 years old. That's a guy I would like the Giants to get. They want an H-back / tight end. So I think they're going to get one of each. A guy that can move in and out of the backfield as well. That's why Myrick is here, because he's an H-back type of player. What that tells me is that Daboll is going to have everybody that's an offensive skill player available to him. There's not going to be like a fullback sitting there collecting dust on a roster. If he's in the game, he might be getting the ball. Versatility, right? Last year, the offense was built around Saquon Barkley the first year. The second year, it was built around Barkley and Jones and the wide receivers, but the offensive line was bad. I blame that on management. I can't blame that on the coaching staff. I blame that on management. Management had Rashawn Slater, and they didn't get him. So, when it comes to pay cuts, we're going to find out who wants to be here and who doesn't. Exactly. But again, Mac, and thanks for the comment. Again, pay cuts are a two-way avenue, right? Like the guy that was cut from the Bills. I wish I knew his name. He didn't want to take a pay cut, so they cut his ass, right? Doesn't mean he doesn't want to be with the Bills. He just cut his ass and said, "See you later." Right? Again, that doesn't mean he's a bad player. Right? He's actually coveted. They cut Joe Feliciano, I think his name is. The Bills released veteran offensive lineman Joe Feliciano. And so he's a guard, and so he may be in the Giants' radar. But now my question becomes, would he take a pay cut? Will he be like, he didn't want to take a pay cut now, and now you're going to ask him to come in here and say, well, guess what? We can only pay you this much. Now, he may want to come in here because he knows that he'll be a starter, right? He is 30 years old. Doesn't mean he's going to be bad, but the Giants have done a lot of this before. Listen, the Giants have had a history of bringing an offensive lineman. Okay, they brought in John Greco. He started. He was a 34-year-old lineman. He was part of Pat Shermer's system, so they brought him in. John Jerry, lots of off-the-wall signings. And then they extended John Jerry. People forget about that. Like, that's how bad the Giants were. They extended John Jerry. Okay? If you don't know who he is, go look him up. He was a bum. He's a freaking bum. Yet he was there on the offensive line. You know what I'm saying? He was on the offensive line. This is what I mean. People need to, they need to understand that this is free agency. This is going to happen. And just because a guy is cut from one team doesn't mean he's going to sign here. I mean, it would be stupid not to call him up, right? But, it doesn't mean they're going to sign him. So, I just wanted to get this out here, get my thoughts on some of the draft picks, some of the trades that went down, and gear up, buckle up. It's free agency frenzy, baby, and it's Football Friday, and we're going to give it to you today. So, this has been your host, The Hurry Up. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm out.